There's no life without humor. It can make the most wonderful moments of our life glorious, and it can also make the most tragic ones bearable. Rufus Wainwright, Canadian songwriter and singer. Humor plays such an important part of our lives. It can help make our experiences and anything that we do on a day-to-day so much more enjoyable. But at the same time, in the context of our show, it can also make our audience's lives a lot better too. If you implement humor in a way that works, you can get your audience excited about what you have to say, be more relatable to them, gain trust faster, and more importantly, help them spread the ideas that you have in your presentations and your key message to the world. And that's exactly why in this week's episode of MasterTalk, I'm going to be covering the ins and outs of humor so that you can master yours. Hi everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic week. Brandon from MasterTalk here, your go-to channel to mastering your talk. And today we're focusing on the art of humor and how you can master yours. So let's get into it. The caveat I want to talk about, the disclaimer so to speak, before I begin talking about the tips, is that humor is a tool, much like how storytelling or sarcasm or different elements that you can use to enhance your presentations. Which means it's not something you need to do, but rather something you can do if you're A, already funny, and B, you enjoy making people laugh. But if this is something that doesn't interest you, it's not something that gets you excited, you don't have to do it. You can just focus on what you do best, especially if you're more of a serious type of presenter. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you do want to master humor, keep watching, and I'll give you the right tips. So let's get started. Number 1. Try and use the same jokes for the same type of keynotes. When people are starting in the art of comedy, what I generally recommend is try and find jokes that are consistent that you can use for many of your presentations. And this is especially helpful for people who generally present the same types of topics. And this is not just true with keynote presenters like me, but also people in school who are doing university presentations. You're not just going to give one presentation on anthropology if you're an anthropology major or a history major, right? If you're a history major, you're going to keep presenting presentations about history, right? So in that regard, there's a great incentive for you to prepare all of your jokes, even if it's just 2 or 3 to get you started, before you start presenting. In the same way that you prepare a speech, you prepare your presentation, you prepare your slides, jokes need to be viewed in the same way, especially if you're a beginner. And then when you figure out the jokes that do land, you can reuse them and recycle them to new types of people, new types of audiences. Let me give you a personal example. So a couple of months ago, I presented to a group of teenagers on how to master their talk, right? And in that keynote, what I generally do in every single one of them is I present 2 types of presentations with and without silences so that my audience can clearly understand why implementing silences in any pitch is super, super important. But when I present the first version without silences, that's usually very bad, by the way, that I do on purpose, I ask my audience, out of 10, how well did the presentation go? What were some of the weaknesses? What number would you give? And most people are generally very nice. You know, they would say something like 7, 8, 9, even if I really want them to say 4, 5, or 6. So in that particular keynote, one girl named Julia, let's call her Julia, raises up her hand and looks at me and says, "Brendan, that was a 5. That was terrible." So I asked her why. And she said, "It was too fast. Nobody understood what you were talking about." And then she said, "But like, what are you trying to say in this presentation?" Exactly. I laughed so hard, even if it was perfectly accurate, by the way. It got the audience so excited that I used that as a joke in my future keynotes. So, for example, in a keynote I gave last week, when I asked the same question back to my audience, how was the first version without silences? What do you think? They would say something like, "Oh, it was pretty good, like 7, 8. And then I would say something like, "Hey, you don't need to be shy about this. Like, there was this girl named Julia who was 16 in a previous keynote I gave that told me that was terrible because it was too fast and it was not very good. And she gave me a 5. And everyone started laughing hysterically. And then they were a bit more honest with me. But the point I'm trying to make here is just because I'm reusing the joke doesn't mean it's bad. It's to a new type of audience. And on top of that, I'm more relatable. I'm breaking the tension between me and my audience. And I'm being more trustworthy. They trust me more in the advice I'm about to give them. All this to say is don't be afraid to reuse jokes, especially at the beginning as you start preparing to be a bit more funny. Number 2, acknowledge the fact that most of your jokes won't land, but your audience will never know if you don't show it. Think about this. You spend hours on end preparing your pitch, preparing your speech, and that joke that you just got right, you're just like, this is it. This is the joke I'm going to present to my audience, and they're going to laugh. So you prepare, you get in front of the audience, you present what you have to do, and then the joke comes, you say the joke, and nobody laughs. So then you think to yourself, oh no, I'm not funny. I should never implement humor ever again. And that's total nonsense, by the way. Here's the secret that most funny people know, but they never talk about. So if I tell you, don't tell anyone. The secret is that most of our jokes don't land. But you'll never know. So when I present, let's say I present maybe 10, 20 jokes, maybe 5 of them land, right? But when the other 15 don't land, I don't start crying or start saying, oh, or I look hurt and I close my eyes and I start looking down. No, I just smile as if I never intended to give a joke. So then at the end of the presentation, when 5 out of 20 of my jokes landed, people will come up to me and say, Brendan, you're so funny. Because from their perspective, I told 5 jokes and 5 of them landed. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is if you really want to be funny, you need to be comfortable with the fact that most of them don't land, and you can never show your audience that they were jokes to begin with. And as long as you can master that, it doesn't matter how many jokes you tell. Because if you tell 100 jokes and 3 of them land, but you didn't show to your audience that the other 97 were jokes to begin with, then you're going to be perceived as funny, my friend. Number 3. The real challenge is spontaneous jokes, and it's difficult to master. But if you can, that's when you'll get the most laughs. Look, I'll be honest, I have a huge advantage than most of the people watching the show in regards to spontaneous jokes. That means jokes that you don't prepare, that you just notice as you're presenting that you think is funny and you just land, right? And the reason I have an advantage is because I've experienced in theater. My whole life's goal in that stint that I did in theater was to make people laugh. The job that I have as a technology consultant is to entertain clients, is to make them happy. My ethos in life is to make other people happy and to make an impact on them. And I do that through laughter. So I practice jokes every single day of my life. So you shouldn't compare yourself to me and to anyone else who's really, really funny. Because maybe the way you give help to other people is just through your time and through advice, and you don't really like making people laugh because it's not really your DNA, and that's perfectly fine. But in regards to spontaneous jokes, I would say the only concrete advice I can really give you is the fact that you need to pay extremely close attention to what your audience is thinking and doing in any part of a presentation. And you need to be able to think fast. So for example, if you start with your artificial jokes that you know you're going to be presenting, and then at some point your audience says something and interacts a certain way, and you think about a joke, then you can land it. Don't be shy and don't be uncomfortable with the idea of just trying it out. Remember, the biggest difference between people who are really funny is that they are not worried about the fact that whatever they land as jokes maybe might not work. So for example, is if I'm saying something about eye contact and my audience is saying something like, oh, it's important to look at every parts of my presentation. And then I would say something in return. I would say, yeah, obviously, as I'm looking at every single one in the crowd, I'm having an easy time looking at everyone. Except Joe over there, because Joe keeps looking at the presentation. He's not looking at me. So that type of joke is funny, right? Or it might not be. But the point is I'm not afraid to try it out and see what happens. All's to say is that thinking fast is a necessity to spontaneous jokes, but they're not a necessary to saying jokes to begin with. And the best way to think fast is really to involve yourself in different activities, in different sports or different ways of thinking that helps you think fast. In my case, it was business competitions. I would present and then I would have to think fast because the judges would ask me questions right after my pitch. I would need to practice that. In other cases, it could be debate because you're trying to outwit your opponents and you're trying to build better arguments in a limited time frame. But even sports, I think, is very important because you have to make very minute decisions. You have to think very fast on your feet. And I think those types of skills can help you as well. So it's up to you to figure out what you like doing and how that skill or activity can help you think faster. Lots to say. But the point of the matter here is that humor is such a great tool that you can use to make your audience lives better and your own life as well. So if you can master it, I believe that you can use that to master your talk as well. As always, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel as well if you want to see more videos like this. And feel free to add me on Instagram as well. I'm at Master Your Talk, so you can find out a lot of posts that I'm working on there. And I'll leave you off with this. If there's one person that you know that wants to be more funny in presentations, don't be shy to send them this video so that they'll be one step closer to mastering their talk. Take care, everyone. Have a fantastic week, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye now.